Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. On this Wednesday night, we are at just about 5 minutes after 8 o'clock Eastern Time, June 6th, 2018. Welcome aboard. A little late tonight. Mentioned yesterday about the fact that there's a little bit of schedule rearranging going on, so I had to push it back even beyond the 7 o'clock hour. But good to see all of you on board here. Going to cover a couple of topics tonight. We touched upon them yesterday. We talked about them extensively on the Joe and Joe show last night, on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook last night. But I did load that video up in the video library, so if you'd like, you could gain a little more insight on the subject matter. I want to bring up the whole situation with regarding the ocean water temperatures and get into that just a little bit. First off, though, we do have some severe weather issues tonight I just wanted to touch upon. 2 severe thunderstorm watches are up, one from eastern Nebraska into Iowa, and then another one in western Nebraska, parts of northwest Kansas, northeastern Colorado, and on up into parts of southeastern Wyoming and western Nebraska. And you could see the Storm Prediction Center's area of marginal to slight risk, covering a large portion of the Central Plains and into the middle Mississippi Valley and even up into the northern Rockies. In the east, it is pretty quiet, just a couple of general areas of thunderstorms in the Carolinas and another one down in Florida, and some general thunderstorm activity possible in much of Texas, southern New Mexico, even southwestern Arizona, and also up into parts of the Pacific Northwest. So we are going to see a few changes coming up over the next few days. One of the interesting things that's been happening is just the overall jet stream pattern that we have. It's being driven by this blocky pattern that we've been seeing in parts of in the Atlantic, and that has pretty much locked a vortex up into eastern Canada. You can see here, this is the jet stream forecast for tonight. Higher than normal pressures in the upper atmosphere, all up in the North Atlantic around Iceland and Greenland. And you've got several vortices running around in eastern Canada. One that's between Greenland and Labrador, and there's another one that's inland there in northwestern Labrador. There's troughing that runs off the coast of the Maritimes down right along the east coast, which is part of the problem that we've been having here in my area of the Northeast, with a lot of cold air aloft and instability clouds. Also got a deep low in the Gulf of Alaska, so that's kind of popped a ridge up in between, and you do have generally an active flow going on across Canada. What's happening is, in the Atlantic side, is that because of that ridging that's out in the northeastern Atlantic, the setup, the troughing in eastern Canada down into the east, really doesn't have a lot of room to work with. It tries to get out of the way, but because of the ridging, it really can't. So the energy winds up rotating up and around. So you get a temporary break over the next 2 days in the Northeast as the one trough lifts out. But you can see what happens. The next arm just sort of rotates down and around, and that comes back for later in the weekend and into early next week. You also have that energy in the west piles into southwestern Canada. So you've got a strong jet stream flow from the Pacific coming into the northwestern part of the U.S., and then it continues into the northern plains, and a little bit of a cutoff high here, a little blocking high that's up in northeastern Canada there. So it really is driving this whole pattern going forward. Don't see a whole lot of change, although the block does finally break down as we go toward next weekend. One last trough maybe that goes on through, but you know what? Then that energy from the west comes in, and you've got more troughing that sets up in the eastern part of the United States. So if you are looking for, any kind of heat, any kind of summer weather, you're going to have to keep looking for it, because it's just not going to happen with this sort of a setup. So we'll come to the U.S. map now. I'll put up the surface, and we'll take a look at what's happening. Now we've got, of course, Saturday is the Belmont Stakes in Elmont, New York, which is not in New York City itself, by the way. It's on Long Island in Nassau County. And the next 2 days look fine, but we've got this next high that's coming down from Canada with that rotation I showed you with the trough. So that's going to bring a frontal boundary here. And with that, we're going to see maybe some rain and some thunderstorms. Now, you'll notice this is Saturday morning. Models seem to be bringing some rain in faster, and then it kind of brings this high down a bit faster too. So that might push the rain out after Saturday morning and lead to improving weather conditions later Saturday and Saturday night. At least that's the GFS's view. The NAM has the same idea. It's just maybe about 12 hours slower, and it wants to bring in the dry air for Sunday the way the European did. The rain, however, parks itself across the mid-Atlantic states over the weekend and into next week, and into the beginning of next week. So this is going to create some potential flooding issues there because of the fact that we've had so much rain over the last month or so, and there's more coming. Now notice, by the way, with that strong jet coming out of the Pacific and that deep upper low that moves into southwestern Canada, you've got snow. We talked about this yesterday. Showing up in the northern Rockies and on up into southwestern Canada. Not unheard of, but a little bit unusual, really. And then that just kind of disappears over time early next week. Meanwhile, in the east, you still have a cool air flow from Canada, the frontal boundary to the south, off the southeast. And again, the GFS wants to bring up some tropical system. It looks like it's, for later next week into the Gulf of Mexico. And we've been saying that the fact that the GFS model stands alone is something that leads us to believe that perhaps this is just model noise until another model picks up on it. We're not going to pay too much attention to it. Now, today, I'm going to bring up the Canadian model. The Canadian model actually does bring up something now in its view as it goes into its long range, but takes a little longer. So that maybe raises a little bit of an eyebrow. The European does not do anything yet, okay? But if we start to see the European at least punch up some kind of a low in the northwestern Caribbean in the next couple of days, and assuming the GFS and the Canadian model do the same thing, then we may start paying attention for something tropical along about mid-month. Other than that, everything else is pretty much just sheer speculation. I want to go back now to yesterday, and in fact, before we do that, let me bring this up. This is the Pacific satellite. We do have the first tropical storm in the Pacific, and that's Tropical Storm Aletta. You can see the circulation. It's in the lower right corner off the south coast of Mexico. Top winds on the advisory from earlier today was 45 miles an hour. I'm just going to check really fast to see if they've changed anything on that. No. So at 3 p.m., top winds were 45 miles an hour. This is going to be an out-to-sea situation for this Pacific storm, as is usually the case for most Pacific storms. And there may be another one behind this that will form over the weekend. That is something that the National Hurricane Center is indicating as a possibility, and the models do show that. Now, let me go back to yesterday's. We were putting up the water temperature map here. This is actually the map of anomaly, below or above average temperatures. And I want to specifically focus in on the Atlantic. In the North Atlantic, you have this large area of below average temperatures. It really encompasses a very, very large part of the North Atlantic and is quite impressive. And one of the things, I went back and did a little bit of research today, taking a look at all this, and I wanted to see when this all started. And we actually saw this begin. Here's all this below average water temperatures, okay? And it goes all through the subtropical Atlantic to the southeast coast of the United States, into the eastern Gulf, and then extends out throughout all of the tropical Atlantic. And you've got a pocket of very cold water, relative to normal anyway, sitting right off the African coast. In between that, water temperatures look to be near or a little bit above average. Also, by the way, near my neck of the woods, it's hard to see it on this map, but you'll just have to trust me. There is a small area of below average ocean water temperatures where I am sitting. I'm not 100% sure why that eddy exists, but this large area in the Atlantic began developing late in February, early March. And if you remember, that was also around the time where we had the big stratospheric warming event that led to the blocking pattern and those 4 nor'easters during the month of March. Now, I'm not saying it could be coincident that both those things happened, but perhaps that stratospheric warming event triggering off those 4 nor'easters might have set the ball in motion with these big storms that ran out in the North Atlantic to create this pool of cold ocean water. And also, we have the phenomena of the melting glacier, decreasing salinity, and increasing ice that formed south of Greenland. Well, that water is bleeding down along the west coast of Europe, which is cut off on this map, but you'll just trust me on that. All that cold water has been bleeding southward, basically around the Atlantic current, and down into and off the African coast, and then turning westward across the Atlantic. So you're getting this large impact being caused by that cold water that is sitting up in the North Atlantic. On top of this, we do have this whole phenomena with regards to the slowing jet stream, the slowing Gulf Stream, that it may have come, to a grinding halt as it comes off the East Coast and moves out into the Atlantic. We've seen the Gulf Stream, when it gets to about the Central Atlantic, you can't even find it. Now, I went back and I read up a couple of articles and a few technical articles about this, and it's very interesting because Dr. Bill Gray of Colorado State University, who's passed away, in case you didn't know, he came out with those long-range hurricane forecasts. He was one of the first people to do this, and he had said many, many years ago that he talked about the Gulf Stream and that eventually it could come to some sort of a grinding halt. And he was not met with a lot of agreement among peers. And I found, in fact, a study that was done by Columbia University, no shabby organization by any means, back in 2002, calling the whole thing a myth. And they went into their reasons, and one of the things that they said was, just pointing out to the fact that the Gulf Stream was something that really didn't change very much. And the reason why this may not have been picked up by models, as I was reading further along, is that there was this general assumption built into a lot of the models that the Gulf Stream was basically a stable phenomena. It didn't really change very much. It varied a bit, but it didn't really change. So the idea of it just coming to a complete stop was something that was not considered. Well, some recent work, as now we are certainly able to get more data and examine more data, there has been growing speculation about the fact that the Gulf Stream may indeed not be something stable, that it may be something unstable, and that the models that handle all of this, they haven't been accounting for that, let's call it, unstableness. So this could be the reason why conclusions were made years ago that may not stand. And there are a number of different viewpoints on this as to what the longer range of impacts could be. Some of them are a little bit more extreme than others. I would just go with what I said yesterday, and that was the fact that this really sort of falls into the category of we don't know. We're seeing this happen now. We are seeing the colder ocean water temperatures down into the tropical Atlantic, from there bleeding down, as we said. So will this or will this not have an impact on hurricane season? The one other thing I want to mention, and that is with respect to that, the anomalies that are being displayed across the Atlantic are the coldest that have been observed since with data going back to 1982. This is the second coldest. The coldest was 1985. So I went back and happened to look at the hurricane season of 1985, and this could be apples to oranges. I just wanted, just out of curiosity, to see what kind of hurricane season we had in 1985. And in 1985, it was very interesting. 11 named storms. There were 6 hurricane landfalls, and that was the greatest number observed in 99 years. So go back to 1886 to 1985. That's what happened in 1985. You had 6 landfalling hurricanes, which was the highest number that was shown in a 99-year span. So that was an interesting phenomenon. Remember, I said hurricanes here, not hurricanes and tropical storms, just hurricanes. The other thing, well, there were 3 majors that year. Elena, which I actually experienced when I lived in New Orleans. Kate, which was in the Gulf of Mexico, if I remember correctly, and that was a November storm. And Gloria in 1985, which became, by pressure, was actually a Category 5, but by wind observation, it was a strong Category 4, and that came up the East Coast and went over Long Island. When it came inland as a Category 1. So the total storms that year, 11, which is, if you take the average, is about 12 now. The long-term average is about 12 storms per season. So it was pretty close to average, even though you had those colder ocean water temperatures, and you also did have systems that developed in the tropical Atlantic in spite of that colder than average water. What we don't know is, and this is another variable that we put out there. Yes, all of that is fine in terms of the profile that we see in terms of the ocean water temperatures now. That does not necessarily mean that it's going to stay that way come 2 months from now. So just bear that in mind. There's a lot of, basically we have a lot of unknowns here to look at, and we're not going to really get the answer to any of this stuff until we actually watch all of this play out. But we're going to have an interesting couple of months with all of this that we're seeing. Okay, so first of all, big collective hello to everybody. Reaver, Delvin, Sebastian P., who was the first person on tonight, but he came on really early at 5 o'clock. And Green Fire. If I don't get everybody's name, please forgive me. Israel, T-Bear, Tim Veltman, Keith Smolin, Matteo De Fiore, Oki AG. So good to see everybody here. Dio Nankumar. So you see where I went with all of this. Again, it's we don't really know. So, but we can see what we can observe. We can observe what's going on in front of us, and let's watch this play out in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, and beyond. Going to be very interesting to find out what kind of impact this is all going to have. Now, as to the Belmont, to me, Justify is going to be met with a number of challenges. The distance coming out of post position 1 on the rail, which is not the place you want to be, where if you want to get out there on the lead, you want to be outside, and so that you can come in on an angle as you head right into the first turn, because Belmont is a 1-turn, 1.5-mile track. Most U.S. tracks are all basically 1.125 tracks, so 1.5 miles in those on those tracks would be would amount to 3 turns, and not at least 3 turns, and not just 2. So it makes this a very unique race. And it's probably at a distance where a lot of these horses won't ever run at again. So we'll see how it goes. The track condition is going to be key. I wonder if we wind up getting a fast track, whether that will play into Justify's hands. He may like a fast track better than he likes the slop. So that'll be another test in all of this. But if he wins on Saturday, he's going to do it. He's going to earn it, and it's only going to make his stock go higher if he's able to overcome these obstacles that are in there. Dio, you missed the whole live stream. How come YouTube didn't remind me? Check your notifications. I don't know why that is. I know some people say they have their notifications checked and they still don't get notified. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that is. Let's see. And yes, Reaver, by September, those ocean water temperatures could look pretty different. Nicole Sweet, no storm in Trinidad, to where there's nothing to worry about in the in the Atlantic right now. We are very, very early. June is usually when you do see them, you wind up seeing them develop in the Northwest Caribbean, the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, and then gradually toward the end of the month, that area of development does tend to spread out. So you're going to go, Reaver's going to go with Hofburg. I haven't really looked at the other horses yet, so I'm going to try and sit down and handicap this race over the next couple of days, and see, and I'll see what I come up with. Israel, you look in the YouTube library. Yeah, look, if you want to look at the Joe and Joe show from last night, I have in my playlists, I have a separate playlist with all the Joe and Joe shows in there. So if you want to do like a Game of Thrones thing and binge watch them, go right ahead. But they are in there, and I tried to put them in date order. So the last night's should be the first one that you see. Okay. We're going to let it go here, folks. Got to get back to work. Joe and Joe Weather Show will be coming up on Facebook a little earlier tonight. We've been coming up earlier, again, because of some schedule adjustments that both Joe and I have had to do. So we'll probably be up on Facebook in about 20 or so minutes. Figure around 8:50. So if you want to tune in to Facebook and you can watch us there, that's at meteorologistjoecioffi.com. and also at joerayoweather.com. Also, if you want to read more about this whole phenomena, I did write an article on my Facebook, on my website, which I posted this afternoon at Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It's up there. You can take a look and read some more regarding this whole thing with the ocean water temperatures and the Gulf Stream. Can I answer the rest of the YouTube question on Joe and Joe? Okay, I'm sorry. What was the original YouTube question, Reaver? Nothing. I'm going back to your what you've put up with regards to nothing in the atmosphere is stable. Good point. September ocean water temperatures could be different. And the cold, again, the cold water from the North Atlantic is draining southward along the west coast of Europe and off the west coast of Africa, and then spreading eastward across the subtropical Atlantic. Why this is happening is, it's not a mystery, but I think it has something to do with the fact that with the Gulf Stream slowing down, and the maybe the increased salinity of the water. The decreased salinity of the water due to the melting glaciers in Greenland, creating a large pool of cold water up in the North Atlantic. David, I snuck a peek on it. I saw what you sent me. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I'll do that. I'll do that tonight and tomorrow. David's referring to an article that came out today about the fact that hurricane speeds of hurricanes, in other words, their motion, not their wind speeds, but their motion may be slowing down. So I'll be interested to see what they come up with. If you go back over the years, you do have periods where hurricanes move tropical systems move slowly. I wasn't aware that there was some kind of set pattern with this. There were a number of years where these systems were moving at a much faster clip than they used to, so perhaps this is some kind of cyclical thing. I don't know, but I will give the article a good read, I promise. Okay, let's leave it there. Have a great evening. We will see you maybe in 20 minutes on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook.